Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get our program started for this afternoon. Thank you all for coming very much. It's really my honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Barry Sleckman. Several of you all in the room, perhaps everyone in this room knows him, but I'd love to say a few words about Barry and brag about his leadership and his accomplishments, and you'll hear a lot more in his presentation. So Dr. Sleckman completed his MD and Ph.D. in immunology from Harvard Medical School, also did an internship and residency in internal medicine and a fellowship in infectious disease from the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. Subsequent to that, he did the postdoc fellowship there in immunology, and then obtained his first position in pathology at WashU, where he was there for more than a decade and moved to Cornell in New York before he joined us as our Cancer Center Director just before the pandemic, January 2020. In just under 3 years, he led a great team to successfully renew our Cancer Center, and you'll hear that story in a few minutes. Dr. Sleckman is extremely accomplished. He's a member of prestigious societies like the American Society for Clinical Investigation, the Association of American Physicians, the American Academy for Advancement in Science. And if you look at his resume, his papers are published in Science, Nature, Cell, Molecular Cell, PNAS, Journal of Experimental Medicine, Journal of Immunology, Nature Medicine, Nature Immunology, Nature Communications, and really the list goes on. His research is focused on immune mechanisms of DNA damage as it relates to cancer, but really his leadership of our Cancer Center has been visionary and transformation, and you'll see why I say so. So Barry, thank you for your leadership and welcome you all.
Thank you, Anupam, for that wonderful introduction. And thank all of you for taking your Friday afternoon to come here today and hear a bit about the Cancer Center and a lot of your accomplishments over the last 3 years. And really, that's what today is about. It's about your accomplishments. I want to start by apologizing that this yearly event, although this is a yearly event, this is the first time I've done this in the 3 years I've been here. I think you all know we've been a little distracted by activities, but we're no longer distracted by those activities. And so what I want to convey to you in the next 45 minutes or so is that a lot of accomplishments have been made despite that distraction, and a lot of accomplishments are set for the future. Now, I want to start with our mission and vision. Our mission is to advance our understanding of cancer to improve prevention, detection, treatment, and survivorship for all people. Our vision is life without cancer. Now, how do we do that? As a Matrix Cancer Center, it's quite simple. We catalyze the integration of cancer-focused programs across UAB to achieve an impact on cancer that is greater than the sum of those parts. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But if you just remember that, that is what we do. That is what a Matrix Cancer Center does. Our charges are to do basic and population science cancer research, to take what we learn from that research and translate it through clinical trials to prevention and care, to provide cutting-edge cancer clinical care, to do community outreach and engagement, to learn about the cancer burdens and disparities in our community, and then to develop ways to mitigate those cancer burdens and disparities. And then, importantly, to educate the next generation of cancer care professionals and cancer researchers who will carry on the top 4 charges. Basic and population science. The core of the O'Neill Comprehensive Cancer Center is our 4 research programs. Cancer biology and immunology that has 57 members and is led by Doctors Troy Randall and Sunil Sudarshan. Neuro-oncology that has 22 members and is led by Dr. Anita Gemelin and Bert Neighbors. Experimental therapeutics with 58 members that's led by Drs. Suzanne Lappy, Narendra Wajpayee, and Rebecca Aaron. And then cancer control and population science, which has 40 members and is led by Dr. Beth Brown and Laura Rogers. Over the last 3 years, we've recruited 25 research faculty into those 4 programs. Those faculty include 14 junior faculty, 11 senior faculty that were recruited into 8 departments and 3 different UAB schools, with a total investment of $22 million by the Cancer Center in those recruitments. These new recruits, despite the challenges of the pandemic, quickly integrated into the research fabric of our institution. For example, Dr. Jonathan Burns, who was recruited into chemistry in the School of Arts and Sciences, and Bernadette Marquise Nostra, who was recruited into radiology, are working with Dr. Suzanne Lappy to develop novel radiopharmaceutical agents that can be used to image cancer and the cancer microenvironment. When they develop these new agents, they carry out preclinical studies in mouse models to learn how the agents work and learn how to improve them, and then have advanced several of these agents to imaging clinical trials. By linking new and different radiopharmaceuticals to the antibodies that tag the tumor or the microenvironment, they can actually use these agents successfully, not just for imaging, but also for treatment. Dr. Courtney Williams, who was recruited into the Division of Preventive Medicine in the Department of Medicine, is working with Dr. Gabrielle Rock to develop remote symptom monitoring approaches for cancer patients that are living at a distance from UAB and in rural areas. These remote monitoring approaches are connected to the electronic medical record and allow for warnings to physicians and healthcare workers when symptoms arise in these patients that need attention. And right now, they have several of these approaches in various stages of trials. Dr. Han-Fei Ding, who was recruited into pathology, is working with Dr. Sunil Sudarshan, and together, their work has revealed several metabolic perturbations that occur in cancer cells. These metabolic perturbations lead to modifications in messenger RNA, and those modifications lead to alterations in the proteins that the messenger RNA encodes that feed back on the metabolic derangements to reinforce them. This obviously is a good thing for cancer, but it's also a good thing for us because using that knowledge, they can target those back and forth pathways in order to treat cancer and prevent these things from occurring. Our partners in science. We've partnered over the last 3 years with 6 different schools at UAB. Of course, the Heersink School of Medicine, but also the School of Public Health, the College of Arts and Sciences, the School of Nursing, the School of Dentistry, and the School of Health Professions. This partnership has been around recruitment, but has also been around developing educational programs like our new master's program in clinical cancer genetic counseling with the School of Health Professions. We also have a great partnership with Southern Research under new leadership now with Josh Carpenter, the president and CEO of Southern Research, who's really driven the development of new programs that synergize with UAB and O'Neill Science and has developed units that help us carry out clinical trials, one of our most important missions, which I'll talk a bit about later. Investment in science. Perhaps one of the most important things we do is invest in the great ideas from O'Neill UAB faculty. This program, O'Neill Invest, is run by Dr. Susan Rupert, and it allows a faculty member with a great idea and no data to get the support to generate data for that idea and then use the data to make them more competitive for outside funding. So for example, we have a new shared resource voucher program where we provide up to $10,000 for an investigator to use any one of our shared resources to do a nucleating experiment to test an idea that they had. After that, they can apply for a Catalyst Award, $50,000 for 1 year to do what we call go or no-go experiments to figure out whether that idea has legs and whether it's something that they should continue to pursue in their laboratory. And if so, then a pre-R01 award for $160,000 over 2 years to give them the support they need to generate the data to make a strong premise for their hypothesis to then be competitive to put in extramural funding, as for example, an NIH R01, which if they get it, will give them $2.5 million over 5 years to do the research they need to do. And if it's a group and they've applied for a pre-PO1, which is $500,000, then be successful to get a PO1, which will give about $12 million over 5 years for the group to do the important work that they are interested in. So far since 2020, we've given out 31 pre-R01 awards to 35 faculty from 12 departments and 2 schools, a total of $4.6 million. And although it's still a bit too early to look for a return on investment, one really should not look until about year 5. I can't help but take a peek. And if one looks, we can see that there's already almost $20 million of return of extramural funding for the $4.6 million that we invested from our sources. Now, we have an impressive investment engine. I like to call it an engine and not a unit because it is an engine. And the investment engine is our development office, which is led by Lisa Roth and includes Danya Segrist, Mary Jane Gibson, Lawrence Isatello, and a recent addition, Jamie Holzenbeck. In addition, we are fortunate to have the most incredible O'Neill Community Board with 72 people on it who are committed to the success of the O'Neill Comprehensive Cancer Center. There is nothing that these individuals won't do to benefit the Cancer Center. And I would like those from that group who are here now and the Young Supporters Board, which is 35 members, to stand up and be recognized. So together, the development office and these groups run O'Neill events. The signature event, which I think many of you know, is Art Blink. This year attended by 725 people, 19 artists, raised a little over $900,000, all used, every bit of it used to support the pilot grant program that you just heard about. Fiesta Ball, the Young Supporters Board event, last year attended by 300 people, raised $134,000, all of it used to support the Education and Training Next Gen Award, which supports students and postdocs doing work in the various cancer labs in the O'Neill. We have event partners like Oak Mountain High School that does a color run every year. This year, 250 participants raised $19,000 to support investigator-initiated clinical trials. The Homewood Witches Ride, if you haven't been, you gotta go. It's an amazing thing to see. 500 witches on bikes, scary. 550 participants, $35,000 raised also to support clinical trials. We have organization partners. Perhaps the longest standing and the one that really has contributed substantially is the Breast Cancer Research Foundation of Alabama, run by Beth Davis. I don't know if she's here. Beth, are you here? No? Okay. Well, I'm recognizing Beth anyway. She does a remarkable job running that organization. Last year, they had 9 events. They raised almost $1.3 million. They funded 15 O'Neill grants for a total of $1.4 million. Vestavia High School, RISE, which has been running now for about 6 years. Vestavia High School seniors have multiple events during the year to support cancer. This past year, they had 8 events. They raised $203,000 that we use to support pediatric cancer research. Mike's Live Foundation this year provided $30,000 to support the Hay Fellows Ambassador Program with community outreach and engagement to help educate men about the importance of prostate cancer screening. We have community partners. Just recently, the Aday family committed $1 million to support pancreatic cancer research and Dr. El Reyes pancreatic cancer spore in memory of the patriarch of the family, Michael Aday, who died of pancreatic cancer in 2021. And we have with us today Ryan Aday and Lauren Aday. Can you please stand and be recognized? And you can recognize Ryan's mother, Ginny, who's at about 35,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean between Europe and here, but sent a text and wished us all good luck with this presentation. I guess I'm the one that needs a good luck. And then we have the Myeloma Research Acceleration Fund, started by a group of people whose lives were touched either directly or indirectly by myeloma. Mary Battle, Susan Williams, Paul Schabacker, and Tom Michaels, who have already raised $260,000 in just 4 months. And some of that money has already been used to support a clinical trial in myeloma being run by Dr. Susan Ball to try to determine what are the best indicators for when a myeloma patient should go to bone marrow transplantation. I've seen Susan and Tom. Could you please stand up? And Mary, did Mary make it? Perhaps not. Could you stand up and be recognized? And then, of course, the pillar of our community partners, O'Neill Industries, Kraft O'Neill, and the O'Neill family, who provided in 2019 a $30 million naming gift for the Cancer Center. Kraft could not be here today because of a family emergency. So all of that money that we use, that they raise, we use to fund research. All of it, population science research, basic science research, clinical research. And that investment allows investigators to generate data that makes them competitive for outside funding. And as you can see, over the last 7 years, those investments have worked out well. Our total cancer funding has gone from $54 million in 2017 to $66 million in 2023. And the more remarkable number is that our funding from the National Cancer Institute has more than doubled, going from $12 million a year to $26 million a year in that period. O'Neill Clinical Care. The O'Neill Comprehensive Cancer Center is the only, let me say that again, the only NCI-designated cancer center in the state of Alabama. It is the only place you can get NCI-designated cancer care. And that is a message that we have to get out to everybody. Does anyone know where this picture is from? Who's taken a trip recently? Who's flown out of Birmingham? That is on the wall of the jet bridge on the airport. Every jet bridge has that on it. Every single person that lives here, that flies anywhere, has to spend at least 5 or 10 minutes standing on those jet bridges looking at that sign. Every time I see that sign, I genuflect out of respect. The other thing that's good about that is that the people around you look at you kind of funny, and they usually give you a little more distance in the line, which is very, very positive. Last year, we saw a little over 10,000 new cancer patients, a total of 125,000 outpatient visits, 7,500 surgeries, 6,500 inpatient visits, and 5,500 telehealth visits. Cancer care here is delivered by a service line, and the service line is led by Jordan DeMoss, the Executive Vice President of the UAB Health System, with medical leaders, Dr. Helen Cronteras, the Director of Clinical Affairs, Dr. Greg Kennedy, the Director of the Network, and Dr. Gabrielle Rock, the Director of Quality. And then a tireless group of administrative leaders, Trevor Lever, Dorothea Starsky, Nisa Zaya, and Leela Sadri. Over the last 3 years, Helen has developed and advanced 11 cancer management teams, 11 disease-specific teams that provide disease-specific cancer care, not only by combining physicians with the needed expertise like radiation oncologists, medical oncologists, and surgical oncologists, but including in those groups navigators, social workers, pharmacists, nurse practitioners, everyone that touches the cancer patient's journey at the O'Neill Comprehensive Cancer Center is part of a cancer management team. We've been fortunate to recruit 3 really remarkable leaders, clinical leaders, research leaders too, over the last 3 years. Dr. Vika Sudeja, the Division Chief for Surgical Oncology. Dr. Basil El Reyes, the Division Chief for Hematology and Oncology. And Dr. Trey Lee, the Division Chief for Gynecologic Oncology. Together, in the last 16 months, those 3 leaders have recruited 18 clinical faculty, both junior faculty and senior faculty, 13 into medical oncology, 2 into gynecologic oncology, and 3 into surgical oncology. We strive to provide cutting-edge care, and I think we succeed at providing cutting-edge care. But we need to provide that cutting-edge care in a setting that's convenient and comfortable. And sometimes that's a challenge. In order to meet that challenge, 2 visionary leaders, President Watts and Will Fernandy, who's with us today, the former CEO of the health system, came up with the idea that we should have a cancer hospital. And that cancer hospital should be built on that parking lot across from the Kirkland Clinic. And since Will's retirement, Dawn Bulgarella, the current CEO of the health system, has picked up that mantle and carried it forward in a strong way. And very soon, we'll be going to the UA board to get approval to build this hospital on that lot. And this hospital will not only provide more space for inpatient and outpatient care, but importantly, this hospital will be designed in a way that allows us to provide multidisciplinary cancer care that includes the integration of clinical trials in an efficient and an effective way. And one can't possibly talk about the vision of leadership without giving a nod to Mr. Arpan Lindy, who turns leadership visions into buildings. And this is his next big project, which we hope will start in earnest in the next year or two. Our aspiration is that everyone in Alabama will have access to NCI-designated care. And although that building I just showed you is a wonderful step towards that aspiration, it can't be the only thing. We have to also reach out into our catchment area, reach out into our state, and provide care that we can closer to where people live. And that is the vision of Dr. Greg Kennedy, the director for our network, who is working with health systems around the state to be able to have us help them deliver the kind of care that we can deliver here. And that includes the Regional Medical Center in Anniston, Medwest, Russell Medical Center in Alexander City, and Infirmary Health in Mobile. The O'Neill brand. We want the word O'Neill to be the brand name for the very best cancer care that you can get in this state. And we want O'Neill to be the brand name for the best place where you can train or work in cancer. To lead the branding charge, we have a communications team led by Julie Miller, our director, and currently Holly Dunn, and new people to be added in the near future. And their job is to get the O'Neill name out. And they get it out in multiple ways. Here shown is just the magazine that's produced every year. There'll be a new one this year. I'll tell you a little secret if you don't tell anyone. It's going to feature patients on clinical trials. Ooh, I didn't say that. And their job is to get us out in the news media. And here's Dr. Erica Stringer-Reeser on Good Morning America during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, talking about a patient that she had that was also a friend of hers. Many of you may know if you're driving down the highway and suddenly you look up and you see someone you work with and you take your eyes off the road. Shouldn't do that. That we started an advertising campaign under the leadership of Rebecca Gamotis in the health system. And that advertising campaign includes billboards, it includes lots of social media, and it includes lots of those advertisements at the airport. And the goal for this is to just get the people in our community to know that they have an NCI-designated cancer center in their backyard if cancer should come knocking on their door. We have a new website. When I arrived, I think there were about a dozen cancer websites here, and none of them, I think, were particularly patient-facing or patient-friendly. And so with the leadership of Mei-Ling Chung, with Virginia Eady, Greg Robinson, and Krista Parsons, with help from a lot of our clinical faculty, over 2 years, we've designed a new cancer website that includes all of the information that anyone would want about cancer activities at the O'Neill. But importantly, the homepage is focused on the patient. It's focused on the person that was just told by their doctor that they have a spot on their x-ray that could be cancer and that they should get that looked at. When that person goes to this webpage, the most important thing is we want them to be able to connect to us to get an appointment as quickly and as easily as possible. Danya Segrist has started our corporate wellness program by reaching out to companies in the Birmingham metropolitan area, in this case, Regions Bank, our first, to provide our help in educating their employees about cancer risks, cancer prevention, and cancer treatment. And at the same time, letting them know that they have an NCI-designated cancer center in their backyard. Clinical research. We have a new clinical trials culture. There are 2 new sheriffs in town. Dr. Basil Arrayes, who's the deputy director of the Cancer Center, who came to us from Emory about 1.5 years ago now, where he was the associate director for clinical research and is an accomplished GI oncologist and clinical trialist. And Dr. Amid Mehta, who's our medical director of the clinical trials office. And together, the 2 of them have established a clinical trials culture that was very much needed amongst the faculty and the staff at the O'Neill Comprehensive Cancer Center. They've advanced investigator-initiated trials. Here's just an example. And this is an important example because it's an example of research that was done in a lab at the O'Neill and then now is being translated to clinical care. Hepatocellular carcinoma traditionally does not respond well to immunotherapy. Dr. Narendra Vajpayee in his lab in animal models showed that if you treat animals with hepatocellular carcinoma with the EZH2 chromatin modifier with an inhibitor of that they now can be treated with checkpoint blockade, with immunotherapy effectively. So he teamed up with Dr. Mehmet Akshay, a GI oncologist and clinical trialist, to design a phase 2 clinical trial using an EZH2 inhibitor in conjunction with immunotherapy to treat patients with hepatocellular carcinoma. We have wonderful new leadership in our clinical trials office. We have 3 new directors and a 4th on the way. Ginger Reeves, the Director of Clinical Operations. Ashley Anderson, the Director of Education and Training. Diana Hablitz, the Director of Quality. These directors work with a group of 7 managers. Anna Wilbanks, the manager for the GYN-ONC team. Harper Basquill, the manager of the solid tumor team. Tiffany Hill, the manager of the heme malignancy team. John Marion and Matt Young, the managers of the data team. Regina Ryan, the manager of the regulatory team. And Lauren McWarther, the manager of the budget team. Together, those managers work with a clinical trials office staff of 160 people. 160 people that work to give and administer 203 trials, different trials to our cancer patients. Last year, they were able to offer 362 cancer patients trial opportunities. This year, we're on track to do over 400. These leaders are building a strong clinical trials culture. Here shown was a clinical trials organization leadership retreat that they had at Protective Stadium with the help of Jean Ann Larson and Matt Painter. Shown on the right is a monthly clinical trials office newsletter that has information that's important to keep people in the clinical trials office up to date, but also includes other critical information like people's birthdays, people getting new pets, things like that, that are really the important thing, the glue that holds this organization together. I think you all know that clinical trials is research. But for our cancer patients, clinical trials are opportunities. Here shown is Charlotte Patterson, a retired firefighter from Opelika. She had recurrent endometrial cancer and was given by an outside oncologist less than a year to live. She participated in an immunotherapy trial being run here at the O'Neill, and the picture on the bottom is her receiving the game ball at a Blazers basketball game 3 years later. 3 years later, no evidence of disease. Edith Lonan is a grandmother from Montgomery. She had an aggressive lymphoma, also given less than a year to live. She was entered in a CAR T-cell clinical trial here, and this is a picture of her receiving the game ball at a UAB basketball game 4 years after she was on that trial. No evidence of disease. A grandmother from Montgomery, a retired firefighter from Opelika, alive today because they were treated on a cancer clinical trial. And that is why we say that at the O'Neill, clinical trials for our cancer patients are standard of care. Standard of care. Now, we have to make sure that we can provide those opportunities to everyone. And Denise McKenzie is working with Genentech and their Advancing Inclusive Research Program, of which we're one of the sites, to try to increase the number of patients on trials that come from populations that are normally underrepresented in clinical trials. Moreover, we've started a collaboration with Cooper Green and Reagan Durant just 2 blocks away from us to make sure that those patients have opportunities to be on cancer clinical trials and have outcomes like Charlotte and Edith had. Community outreach and engagement. Our cancer burdens are significant. There's about 30,000 new cases of cancer every year in our state and about 9,000 in the Birmingham metropolitan area. This state has the 8th highest mortality from cancer in the country. Mississippi next door is number 2. We have increased mortality amongst rural and minority patients, and 47% of the people that live in this state qualify as being medically underserved. The O'Neill is the only NCI-designated cancer center in this state, and it's our responsibility to address those disparities. Community outreach and engagement is led by Dr. Isabel Scarinci, the interim Associate Director for Community Outreach and Engagement, Claudia Hardy, the Director of Community Health Access and Relations, Francine Walton, the Director of Community Outreach and Programs. And we have a wonderful community advisory board that helps us strategize and make decisions that is co-chaired by Lauren Roberts and Justin Pope. The O'Neill COE team, in addition to Francine and Claudia, include Tara Bowman, Rochelle Wallace, Sylvia Kamada, Paula Evans, and Marcus Glover. All of them together work with 22 county coordinators and 402 community health advisors spread throughout the state in many of the 67 counties of this state. These individuals run awareness programs, they run screenings, they run education in just about every county in this state that you can see with the colored markers on that map. Last year, their work touched slightly over 95,000 people. An example of their activities, one of many, is their involvement in Wipe Out Cervical Cancer Alabama, a new program that's about to start in collaboration with COE, the Alabama Department of Public Health, Together for Health, the ACS, and the Rotary. And the goal of this program is to eliminate cervical cancer as a public health problem in this state. Alabama is the first state to initiate a program like that. It's nice to be first for something good, isn't it? Really good. There you go. The first. The program will provide not only education, but access to vaccines. This past year, we initiated the O'Neill COE Liaison program, where we have representatives from each of the research programs that work with COE and with their programs to make sure that information is flowing from the community to our research and from our research back to the community. And our liaisons are Dorothy Pegmezzi in Cancer Control and Population Science, Aaron Ahn in Neuro-Oncology, Rebecca Aaron in Experimental Therapeutics, and Lise Norian in Cancer Biology and Immunology. The signature event for the year is always the O'Neill Dissemination Institute. And if you haven't been, and many of you haven't, and you have the opportunity to go, you really should. It's an amazing thing to see. This year it was held for 2 days in Huntsville, and 138 of the community and health advisors and 96 faculty, staff, and partners participated in this event, which really is about discussing what are the cancer burdens and disparities in the different communities that the community health advisors represent, and for us thinking about and understanding what we need to do to mitigate those disparities. Education and training. Education and training is led by Dr. Lolita Shev-DeSamant, the Associate Director of Education and Training, and Patrick Bolak, who's the Director of the Education and Training Office. Together, this program touches 563 trainees, 296 graduate students, 84 postdoctoral fellows, 67 summer and undergraduate students, 101 students now in the cancer biology program that started just 4 years ago, and 122 middle and high school students. Just one little example of many of their accomplishments in mentoring and helping trainees is Dr. Awal Chadha, who is a GI oncologist, physician scientist who's mentored by Dr. Casey Weaver and works on immune responses to colon cancer. In 2001, he received one of the Next Gen Awards to support his work. He then went on to win a Conquer Cancer Award from ASCO, and then more recently, an NCI K99 R00 Award. Last year, the Education and Training Group got a grant from the ACS to advance diversity in cancer research, $625,000 grant to support 4 students underrepresented in science for a 2-year baccalaureate program and 8 students for summer internship. Notables. You really can't talk about the last 3 years without using the P word, pandemic. We all know what that did. We all know how disruptive it was. It did leave some new practices in its wake, which will help us, but overall, it was difficult to get through. But we're through it now. We're stronger, and we are on a great course. In 2021, we renewed the Cancer Center Support Grant with a score of 20 and an overall descriptor of outstanding, the best score we ever received. And you should give yourselves a big applause for that. That was all of your work that rose up and gave us a score that put us in the top 25% of the 72 NCI-designated cancer centers in this country. The O'Neill was one of the first 8 cancer centers designated by the NCI in 1972. And in 2022, we celebrated our 50th anniversary. In the past 3 years, we've seen 4 inaugural endowed professorships. Dr. Byrd Neighbors receiving the William Austin Brown Professorship in Brain Cancer Research. Dr. Luciano Costa receiving the Mary and Bill Battle Professorship in Multiple Myeloma Research. Dr. Erwin Van Meer receiving the David Hart Professorship in Brain Cancer Research. And Dr. Suzanne Lappy receiving the Emmett O'Neill II Professor in Lung Cancer Research. We had 2 members inducted to the National Academies, probably the highest honor that you can receive as a physician or researcher. Dr. Casey Weaver to the National Academy of Science, and Dr. James Margaret to the National Academy of Medicine. We started the inaugural, well, we had the inaugural Partridge Lecture to honor Ed Partridge, the director of the Cancer Center from 2007 to 2017, and an individual who worked at UAB for almost 50 years. We held a research retreat in person at Regents Field. Tika threw out the first pitch. It was attended by 427 people, had 161 posters and 10 trainees, and it was administratively orchestrated by Laura Gallitz, who orchestrates a lot of these events, including this one, and Amber O'Connor. We welcomed a new deputy director that I told you about, Dr. Basil El Reyes, who's also the chief for the Division of Hematology and Oncology, and an accomplished GI oncologist and clinical trialist. We welcome an inaugural associate director for diversity, equity, inclusion, Dr. Rodney Tucker, a professor of medicine and director of Palliative and Supportive Care Center. We will be welcoming the incoming associate director for community outreach and engagement, Dr. Tamaya Nolan, who's currently at Ohio State University. We welcome 3 new program leaders, 2 for experimental therapeutics, Dr. Suzanne Lappy and Rebecca Aaron, and 1 for neuro-oncology, Dr. Anita Gemlin. And then, of course, everything we do sits on 2 pillars in the Cancer Center. Dr. Michael Bertram, the Associate Director for Administration, and Ryan Chambers, the Assistant Director for Administration, who make everything work. What are our opportunities going forward? UAB O'Neill has the opportunity to be the best place in this state to train in cancer. UAB O'Neill has the opportunity to be the best place in this state to work in cancer. And importantly, UAB O'Neill has the opportunity to be the best place in this state to be treated for cancer. And how do we achieve these opportunities? We just do great things. No matter what we do, whether we do research, whether we do patient care, whether we do administration, whether we do policy, whether we do outreach, whether we do education, we do great things. We do things that will have impact. We do things that will change the way we work and the way other people work to be able to provide ultimately better care, cutting edge care for our patients. And the way we do great things, the secret sauce, is mentors. We find people who can help us, who know how to help us get where we want to go, how we want to do great things that we haven't done before. We haven't, but we need to do them. We find mentors that can help us get there. And at the same time, just as important as finding a mentor is being a mentor to help people who are trying to get where you are. So if we all find mentors and be mentors, we'll all do great things together and we'll advance all those causes, and we will become the place for training, for working, and for treating cancer. Pictured here is a gentleman who was my mentor, Emil Inaugural. He was the chair of the Department of Pathology. And I joined that department on September 15th, 1998. My lab was right down the hall from his. And the very first thing I did was go to his office. Emil was a prominent immunologist, won the Lasker Award, a very accomplished scientist. And I said, Emil, what will it take for me to be a successful scientist? And he looked at me with this somewhat puzzled and I think kind of irritated look that I would ask such a ridiculous question. And he said, just do great things. Just do great things. You know, he said to me, he said, you want me, I know, you want me to list all these things you have to do, like get grants, write papers, give talks. Yeah, that's not important. Just go back to your lab and do great things. And Emil was my mentor from that day until December 16th, 2022, when he died of brain cancer. Dolly, you want to play the movie? So now, for those of you that haven't understood a word that I've said for the last 45 minutes, we have a gentleman that's going to explain all this to you in 1 minute.
Cancer impacts everyone, both children and adults. The citizens of Alabama of all ages are fortunate to have outstanding cancer doctors and researchers right here in our state at the O'Neill Comprehensive Cancer Center at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. No matter which football team you support, you can all get behind the O'Neill Comprehensive Cancer Center. It's Alabama's only cancer center designated by the National Cancer Institute and is a national leader in driving research, advancing new treatment, engaging communities in prevention and early detection initiatives, and training the next generation of physicians and scientists. They are all working every day on discoveries that will lead to new treatments for patients of all ages. And with the team-based approach to care, experts have multiple specialties work together to game plan the best way forward for each and every patient. It matters where a cancer patient is treated first. And in Alabama, we have a top-ranked team right here for all of us at the O'Neill Comprehensive Cancer Center at UAB.
There, you heard it. Thank you. Thank you all. Enjoy your weekend. If you have any questions, come on up.
Thank you.